it's not wrong to have the thought of wanting to take your life, right? To act out on that thought is a whole different thing. And the reason why I say that is because there probably are a lot of men who've had that thought. And I don't want anybody listening to this to think that something's wrong with you because you had that thought. And my brother even went as far as, you're talking about changing the narrative, he even went as far as explaining to me that it's okay to have a conversation with somebody and ask them that question. To have a conversation with somebody who might be suffering from depression and say, hey, man, have you ever thought about taking your life?
Let's go, let's go, let's grow, let's grow, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's go, let's go, let's grow, let's grow.
What's going on, people? We're back again. I'm Carlos V. Spencer.
And I'm Coach Rod.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. We're the highly unlikely, I almost want to say couple, but at least friends. And what I mean by unlikely is a receiver and a DB, man. I was watching Deion and Ocho on social media go at it on a live TV and getting in the stands. I thought about me and you getting the wide receiver stands, getting the DB stands, and get ready to go at it.
Listen, man, listen. I'm glad you corrected the couple part. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Just make sure you corrected that. But
I got it right.
You know, on the surface, it's an unlikely pairing, but once you get past the surface, it's best friends for over 20 plus years, man. So let's rock and roll.
A lot of information, a lot of knowledge. Yep, we're back to it. Black Dad Unfiltered. Black Dad Unfiltered, man. Here having the conversations about Black fathers, information that we want to share, motivate, inspire, kind of change the narrative of what a lot of people unfortunately think about Black fathers, which I think the narrative is changing. It is shifting. But the reason why we're doing this is to continue that, man. Share a light, shine a light, show the positive things that are happening, have conversations about Black fathers who are doing some dope stuff, and just have some conversations that we can possibly cause for other people and continue for other people, and cause some other people to have questions. You know what I'm saying? So having people lean on us and hear this and inspire them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I want to add to that. One of the reasons why I'm so proud and happy to take this project and this initiative on is not only to educate and change the narrative, but to create this platform in the community for Black fathers to hear their thoughts spoken through other people's lips, right? Oftentimes you find yourself in the conversation and said, this is what I'm experiencing. So it's not only challenging the narrative, but also creating that resource and that community where we can just, help each other and get better and become better fathers.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And we've been on the series. How to raise Black sons in America. If you're first time listening in or the first time watching, thank you. Welcome. But go back, listen to some of the other topics, man. This has been a series for sure, how to raise Black sons in America. And today we're dealing with emotional intelligence. So how to raise Black sons in America, dealing with emotional intelligence, how to raise Black sons in America, and a couple other segments on different subtitles we dealt with on past episodes. Feel free to jump back in on those episodes as well. But we chose that one for today, man. What strikes up when you hear that, man? Before we're going to break into that for the second segment, but hearing that, man, give us a little bit.
So when we start talking about emotional intelligence, as I started getting older, right? As you get older, you get more wisdom, or you get more knowledge, and wisdom is the application of that knowledge. I started realizing the fight was within myself, right? The fight was me understanding what I was feeling, right? For myself, how it impacted my then marriage, relationships, friendships, and children. And I said, wait a minute, this is really the heart of being a Black person, right? So once you start unpacking the history, I just said to myself, Los, we got to talk about this, because as Black men, from the time we're born, providing, protecting has been, ingrained into us. Feeling has almost been beaten out of us. And those impact all of our relationships. This is why we're getting a divorce, not just Black men, but all of us as a community.
Right.
So I said, if we're called to be the leaders of our house, you have to embrace this conversation of building your emotional intelligence. And, when we get to that second segment, I guess we'll define it. But to me, this is a topic that I think we're going to continue talking about. And when we start inviting our guests, bringing in experts in the field to help us as Black men feel comfortable, right? Embracing the fact that there is a emotional side to us. And if we can unpack it, we unleash a tremendous amount of power within ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, we need that, man. I'm gonna make a statement, man. It's Black Dad Unfiltered, right? Right? We
Go ahead.
unfiltered. I'm gonna make a statement. I
I
don't
don't
know
even
why
own
we
a filter.
triggered
Let's go.
it. I don't know why he triggered this, but man, I've heard one of my mentors say this, and he quoted somebody else. I can't remember exactly who he quoted, so I'm not gonna say who he quoted it from. But he said there's a quote that says the black man will never make it because his woman hates him and the enemy is raising his children.
Oh, wow. I got to find that. We got to find that.
Listen.
We got to find that because on our Facebook page, we have about 10 quotes
Yeah.
that we have. I want to add that to the Facebook page. That's
Man,
crazy.
He said that to me, and it did to me what I bet you was doing to a lot of listeners, right? It shakes you up.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the statement is factual in its entirety, but I am saying you got to pay attention to it.
What'd you say in the church? You're either gonna say amen or ouch.
You're gonna say amen or you're gonna say ouch, right? So yeah, we'll add that. Yeah, we'll definitely add that. So how to raise black sons in America, emotional intelligence. That's gonna be our second segment, our main segment of the day. Our first segment, we usually play something, whether it be a black father, somebody who's well known, or just maybe a black father themselves, or maybe something popular going on. We usually like to shed that light in this first segment and have a little bit of discussion about it. Something that somebody may have heard or a person that you may have known on. And our reason for doing this, right now, we were having a conversation about this. And the reason we're doing this is to shed a light, is to change that narrative. A lot of things that we said earlier is to show that there are black fathers who are doing some good, man. There are some black fathers who may have some struggles, but there are some black fathers who are out there and they're doing it well. So it's not that when we're shedding the light or showing this light, and maybe it's somebody quote unquote famous, it's not that we're not talking about your everyday father, because we're going to get into that as well. But this first segment, talking about emotional intelligence, we're going to play this clip from John Wall. He's an NBA basketball player, and he's talking about some things in this clip in particular about himself and his sons. And when I first heard it, I'm not going to go into it until after we show the clip. When I first heard it, though, it reminded me and shocked me at the same time to see that people who are on a certain level in life, fame, fortune, money, a lot of the stuff that he has, are still dealing with things when it comes to emotions, are still dealing with things heavy. So we're going to take a second to watch this clip, and then we're going to jump into it a little bit for our first segment. Go ahead and listen in here.
I know how it is, and I'm trying to tell people mental health is serious, so I had to go get a therapist after that.
Yeah, me too.
Like, if it wasn't for my two boys, I would have like, I put it in my head twice. And a lot of people that's close to me and my friends at the time didn't know. And not to branch off, but you know what I mean? Like, I had a video came out throwing up gang signs and stuff like that. That's when I was in my darkest moment, trying to figure out to find happiness.
Go back though. You said you had a in your head?
Yeah, twice I wanted to commit, and I was like, man, if I take myself away from this earth, I'm failing my kids. Like, who's gonna be able to raise them?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wrote about it in a Players Tribune. I wrote a story about it. I'm like, I take it away from them. That ain't fair to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know I gotta be here.
So listen, kind of heavy for sure. He
Definitely.
talked about a few different things. The one thing, Black Dad, the one thing I like that he brought up was the reason he did not commit suicide was because of his sons, because of his children. I'm gonna let you chime in, man. I'm not even gonna run it off with it, man. Coach Rob, what you got for us?
Listen, so I read the article, right? It's on the Players Tribune, and we're going to post this article on our YouTube page. So if you go to the YouTube page, it'll be in the description. We'll share the link to the Players Tribune because there's more to it. And that 52-second clip, it was enough to let you know that we deal with stuff. Everybody deals with stuff, right? And you set it up earlier talking about fame or fortune, but when you read the article, there's a few things in this article when you start to dive into it. One of the reasons why that led him to thinking about suicide and contemplating it was the loss of his mother and the emotional toll that was taken on him, right? And so he talks about his childhood, about, kind of if anybody dared him in his community, he did it, right? Getting kicked out of classes and gyms, almost an angry kid. And we're not labeling, but this is from the article. And his mother was the one anchor emotionally. He had this connection to, this is the one person, despite of whatever I do, their love is consistent. And maybe not on this
lost that anchor.
Right? So maybe not on this show, but another show, we're going to talk about how as adults, we're always looking to fill these emotional voids in our life as we grow up. So
Mhm.
even if you're 30, 40, you're still going to try and fill the void in your life from when you were 5 or 6.
Right.
It may even influence your mate. But then you notice how he said, because of his children, if you read the article, he even said, being a father wasn't enough to stop me from committing suicide.
Mhm.
So think about that. The part that I really want to draw people's attention to, if you go read the article, which wasn't mentioned in the video, was he finally said, screw this. I need help.
Yeah.
And went to a friend and said, I need help.
Mhm.
Right. And so how many of us are, one, don't know what we're feeling when we're feeling it, which is hard, right? Because he was going through depression. You know, he
Mhm.
mentions that. And two, how many of us, particularly as Black men, are afraid to ask for help?
Mhm.
Right? He mentions in the article that he had to be the man of the house from the time he was 9. His father was incarcerated from the time he was 1. His father died, I believe, of liver cancer when he was 9. Right? And so from 9, he had to be the man of the house. And his mindset from that age 9 was, I will do everything by myself and I will endure it. You know what I mean? So I don't want to take up all the space, but as I was reading, I said, how many of us have this mindset that I'm going to get it done? It don't matter what happens to me. It don't matter if I have to die, break a leg. If I don't, what emotionally am I going to put myself through? Because my mindset and my image of what a man should be, in this case, a protector, provider should be. And eventually he had to break that image of complete independence to say, I need to actually rely
Right.
on someone. And I think at the second segment, we're going to talk about what emotional intelligence is and how you can strengthen it within yourself. But as I read it, I saw what I walked away with was he's a human being. I'm a human being. We're all human beings.
Exactly. No
And
matter
as
what
Black,
level we're on.
exactly. And as Black people, our community helps shapes us. Two, the imagery that's passed down to us influences us,
Yeah.
right? And at
Yeah.
times to our detriment.
And you said something real key, man, that I think a lot of men and a
Mhm.
lot of Black men in particular that deal with. I believe it was C.D. Jakes who made this quote. It definitely was C.D. Jakes. A man left to himself will either implode or explode. Right? A man left to himself will either implode or explode. So by yourself, either you're going to implode upon yourself or you're going to explode on somebody else. So
Wow.
you're going to do harm to you, you're going to do harm to somebody else. And
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of men in my own life. So I'm big on statistics, right? I'm big on the information, the data. I love how you drive that point home because we see what's happening across nations in different lives. I also love what you see firsthand in your own life. And I've seen a lot of men who try to carry that weight by themselves, who try to figure it out by themselves. And what you said, which was I think was really key, and I hope somebody listening in catches this, whether you're a father, black son, is that he finally said, John Wall finally said, I need to get some help. I need to get some help. And he reached out to somebody because a lot of times I was having this conversation today with somebody I went and had lunch with. A lot of times people are struggling and sometimes it's not the obvious person. He was talking about a friend of mine. He was talking about a friend of his that unfortunately took his life. He said the friend was doing well, had all this money, all the vehicle for himself, the vehicle for his wife, had tons of contracts lined up, and said took his life. I remember when Twitch, you remember when that happened with the dancer Twitch,
Yeah.
who was also a DJ on Ellen
Yeah.
DeGeneres
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
And everybody
Yeah.
he was just the happiest person, right? But
You won't
for
know.
me, it's I want to drive this point home. It's not always the obvious person. Check on the obvious person, but it's not always the obvious person. Sometimes it's the person who looks strong too.
Listen, so a couple of things, right? Just for anybody who's watching or listening, get your tribe. You need a tribe. You
That's
mentioned
good.
you're either going to implode or explode. Dr. Reverend A.R. Bernard often says, you don't grow in isolation, you grow in community. Get your tribe, because he even said he was masking his pain.
Mhm.
He says it. So people on the outside had no idea. None. He was masking it. So you
Yeah.
got to, and he also said no one was checking on him for him. So, and I know when we say this, a lot of people that's probably listening saying, that's me. Man, woman, child, old, this doesn't know age,
Mhm.
right? And so this is why I say choose your friends wisely. But when we get into more of this, this is about suicide, but suicide stems from the depression. Depression stems from, some level of either chemical imbalance or some emotional trauma.
Yeah.
As we're looking at this, hopefully as we continue to talk, someone's hearing themselves in this and saying, you know what, I'm going through this because, I wouldn't be surprised if people did a study, maybe we should look into this, is how many Black men are suffering from depression,
Yeah.
undiagnosed, right? If possible, how many of them are walking around feeling they have to mask it, feeling too afraid to be vulnerable to talk about it? And then I think at some point we got to have a conversation on how does the community support it when you, especially as a Black man,
Yeah.
when you acknowledge it. Go ahead.
I think with this clip too, and definitely with this first segment, we've talked about that. A lot of the reason for this is helping to change the narrative, right? How can we change the narrative? I think in this particular video on this clip we're talking about, we want to change that narrative of Black men having to carry the load all by themselves, right? Like he said, I need to get some help. And we know a lot of Black men who unfortunately don't reach out and just try to carry it on their own because they're just trying to be what they believe a man is. And for some reason, I'm gonna say this, for some reason, many people feel like you're not operating as a man if you ask for help. You're not being a man if you're reaching out, especially Black men. And you talked about how he went through a lot of trauma. He didn't have his father in his home. He lost a stable person. I think a lot of Black people, and we're talking about Black men in specific, suffer from PTSD from growing up in certain situations like that never get dealt with. And now you're an adult. So one other thing I want to say too, while we still got a little bit of time here.
Yeah.
I talked to my brother Glenn about this, and he has a master's in psychology, and he talks about how I want to send this message out to somebody watching it, somebody listening in, that it's not wrong to have the thought of wanting to take your life, right? To act out on that thought is a whole different thing. And the reason why I say that is because there probably are a lot of men who've had that thought. And I don't want anybody listening to this to think that something's wrong with you because you had that thought. And my brother even went as far as, you talking about changing the narrative, he even went as far as explaining to me that it's okay to have a conversation with somebody and ask them that question. To have a conversation with somebody who might be suffering from depression and say, hey, man, have you ever thought about taking your life? Because someone could think like, I think I had someone that thought in my mind that you may be triggering or pushing that person towards that because you're bringing it up, but it's okay to bring it up.
Yep.
When somebody acts upon it, it's a whole different thing.
So the truth of the matter is, I would assume on the other end, if someone's asking that question to you, you may feel like it's the first time somebody actually sees you.
That's good.
Right?
That's good. That's good. Keep your thought. I want to cut you off. That's good for the person who's listening who needs to check on somebody. Or please continue.
Yeah. Because it's like this person cares. They see my pain.
Yeah.
Someone out there actually cares about me. And this is not all about someone caring about you, but we're talking about, it's not a problem to ask that question. I want to read something from this article along those lines, right?
Okay.
I'm going to cut to the part. He says, but the day is going to come when you can't do it on your own, and you got to be strong enough on that day to ask for help.
And this is John Wall.
This is John Wall.
He
right?
said, say that again. The day is going to come.
The day is going to come.
Right.
Right? It's not an if. It's
Yes.
a when. When you can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
And you gotta be strong enough on that day to ask for help. Just give me a few minutes to talk about this, because the operative word on this to me is strong enough.
Yeah.
Right? Because I can't speak for every Black man. I can just tell you how I grew up and how I was raised and what I saw. Weakness is not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
You follow what I'm saying?
I do.
So not just asking.
There was no room for that.
There was no room. Thank you. There's no room for it.
Right.
And so what he's saying is actually the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Are you strong enough?
That's a good. I want to cut you. I want you to please finish this.
Go ahead.
That's a good statement because it's a different way of viewing it. It's not weakness, because I believe a lot of black men believe it's weakness to
Mhm.
reach out to somebody. And you're saying when that day comes, not if, are you going to be strong enough to ask for help? I think
Yeah.
if men even heard it phrased that way, I think they would move differently. Yeah.
Listen, and some of our future shows, we're going to talk about vulnerability. So we're going to tease vulnerability a little bit in this, because in my life, my short life but long life, however you want to perceive it, depending how old you are, right? If you're young,
Yeah.
I'm old. If you're old, I'm
You
young.
look good though, man. I'm telling you, yeah.
Listen, man, it's a blessing and a curse. So, but
Somebody go catch that when they finish it. So they
the
catch.
key, I'm going to drop this here. The key to relationships is your courage to be vulnerable,
Mm.
because only in that vulnerability you actually grow.
The key to your relationships is the courage to be vulnerable. Okay.
Realizing that being vulnerable is your greatest strength. It
Mm.
takes a lot of strength to know that you can be hurt and still walk through that fire. Most people run from pain,
Yeah.
right?
Listen,
Most
listen,
people, but you know, that's a
I'm about to
conversation.
I'm about to end the show. I'm about to turn it off.
That's a conversation for another day. But
It is.
I know we want to get on to defining the next piece, but
We
I just
do.
want, as I was driving, give me 2 minutes. As I
Go
was
ahead.
driving in,
Yep.
I started reflecting on myself, and this is what we do. We talk. We don't have opinion pieces. We're not critiquing other black men. We're talking, and hopefully in this conversation helps someone.
Yeah.
But I realized even for myself, because part of the reason why this resonated with me is because one of the keys to me developing was becoming more intelligent about my emotions. I only saw my father in my whole life cry once, and that's when his father died.
Mm.
This is even going to be even more important. I've never seen my mother cry.
I was gonna
Even
touch-
when her mother passed away, she just
Mhm.
touched my grandma's face and kept it pushing.
Mhm.
And my whole life has been shaped by these two people. I was fortunate to have both my parents, and I still have them. But understand, these images were branded into my mind.
Mhm.
So even in my relationships, my attitude is always, I'll figure it out.
Mhm.
Right? I don't have time to sit down and cry.
Mhm.
As I got older, I started embracing, hey, if I got to cry, I'm going to cry. If I got to talk to somebody, it don't matter, because I have to be stronger to understand that this is important. But we'll talk about that another show. We're just
Well,
teasing
listen,
people about what we're about to do.
You're right, but we're gonna segue right into it because, I mean, pun intended, what you just explained was emotionally intelligent. To like, there's no other
Yeah.
way of going around that. You said this is what I grew up around. I have every reason to believe, to walk and feel that, you don't cry. That's not what you do. But you made a choice within yourself to say, nah, I can't move like that. It's not intelligent for me to move like that. And speaking on Black Dad Unfiltered, by you making that choice, that automatically is going to affect your son. It's automatically going to affect your
Absolutely.
children,
Mhm.
because now they're going to be exposed to a different environment, and they're going to be able to say, hey, my dad was strong. My dad also moved with his emotions. He talked about him. He made the space available for me to be able to talk, for me to be able to move. So, man, let's continue right in that vein, man. How to raise
go.
black sons in America, and we're dealing with emotional intelligence. That's our main segment for today. How to raise black sons in America. We've been doing a different segments on how to raise black sons in America. This one in particular is emotional intelligence. So we've been breaking this thing up, and you kind of were already in the vein of it. I'll add to it a little bit and let you continue back on to pick it up. Just for me, when you hear emotional intelligence, a lot of it is wrapped up in the word. Is how do you move with your emotions in an intelligent way? How do you start to discover, or do you start to discover, because I believe that you need to, that there is a wide range of emotions. I believe for a lot of us, being sad and happy, angry, and joyful, like those are the main ones you kind of see. And so it's like, is anything else okay in the middle? Right? Are there other things outside of those emotions that are okay? Are those the only emotions that are okay?
Sure.
Because for men in particular, when we start feeling other emotions, since we haven't seen it, like you said, and it hasn't been in an environment, and it hasn't been welcome or expressed, that could be on a subconscious level. That could be a thing that tells you it's not okay to act like that. Get up and wipe them tears out, boy. Stop crying. You okay? How many times have we heard that growing up?
Man, shoot. How about I'm gonna give you something to cry about?
Listen,
That's my favorite. That's my favorite.
you want to cry?
Shoot.
King of the cry.
I'm gonna give you something to cry about. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I like how you intro that, but I do want to define it from a,
Yes,
from a,
yes, please.
although I'm not a clinician, but I have, I have taught at the college level, and even in business, EI, emotional intelligence, is something that you try to teach,
That's
especially
good.
people that are people in leadership. And the definition, the widely accepted definition, is the ability to understand and manage your emotions. So really, it's really about reflecting, understanding, recognizing, understanding, and managing. Those three, right? So you got to recognize what you're feeling. You have to understand why you feel it. So you talked about, are these acceptable? I'm going to dive deeper and say, why do I feel this way?
Gotcha.
Because then I can teach anyone else why I operate this way so they can understand me. And then how do I manage it? And also the other part of it, which gets, people don't really talk about if you don't dive in, is how does it impact others? And how can I regulate how it impacts others? This is critical. And so as we're going to get ready to talk about raising sons in America, this time we're going to really focus on, as a father, how are you equipped? What is your intelligence in your emotions of recognizing, understanding, and managing them? And then how does it impact your family? And then how do we teach these skills to our younger children? Because we already, dropped hints. None of us grew up with our parents saying, "Oh, wow, tell me why you feel this way." Why do you think it's no? It's, hey, don't let the school call me, boy. You know what I mean?
Listen.
Or again, I'm gonna give you something to cry for. Right. And so this is why I sit there and say, and I know we're going back and forth, but I told you this is a passion of mine.
Yeah.
This is why I teach at the college level. This is why I teach entrepreneurs. It's so for me, I give you a little bit of my story, right, Los, and then we can get into some of the tools we have.
Definitely.
So I was raised in this country, but I was raised in my culture. So I am American, born and raised, but I was raised Haitian, which means what we ate, how we talked, our mannerisms were similar to as if I grew up on another,
To this point, you don't lose that point.
Sure.
I want people to really grab this. When I first heard your mother speak to you, he know where I'm going. Coach Rod know where I'm going. To the point where she left the room, and I said, "Rod, what did she just say?" He was like, "Bro, like
English.
that was English."
I told you
like, that
before.
was what?
When in high school, I mean, girls would be afraid to call because why's your mother yelling? I said, she's not yelling, she's just talking to me. You know what I mean?
So
But
that mean you grew up in an environment,
right, it was
that a
different.
Haitian environment, right?
The food, the music, everything. But I go to school in America. So now you have my culture conflicting with the US culture. Right? Well, US is, and especially when you're young, it's about making sure you have the sneakers, the clothes, you watch the shows, and nothing. I'm not passing any judgment. It was just different than what I was feeling at home. So I'm not afraid to say this. I got kicked out of elementary. I was almost kicked out of high school, and I was almost kicked out of college, all for acts of physical, physical violence, right? Not until I got older did I realize the conflict of having to live two different identities and what it did to me, and why I was so angry, and why I never felt like I fit in, and why for most of my life I was looking for a friend circle that mirrored my life, because I couldn't identify 100% with my people I grew up with who were 100% American.
Can I ask you this question?
Sure.
Because you touched on something. I want you to open it up a little bit, because when we're talking about emotions, emotionally intelligent, I've heard it said, and I've seen it in this space as well, that when people operate in anger, a lot of times, not all the time, it's coming from fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes it's coming from a place of being afraid of something. So I'm being angry, or either I am or other people are. and not understanding that they may be afraid of something. Did that show up for you at all?
So for me, it wasn't fear. It was who would understand me. And I didn't know that then.
Yeah,
I
right.
was angry. So I guess if you ask me to put myself back in the mindset that I had when I was, younger,
Yeah.
I would say it was the fear of not being accepted, the fear of being ostracized, all that jazz. But where I'm going with this now is it impacted almost everything I did through college, even into my young adulthood. It wasn't until I recognized, oh, this is why I was angry back then. This is why, rather than being who I am now, that's all about love and supporting unity, that I would lash out first.
Mm.
You know what I mean? This is what led me to being sad on some days. And so once I started recognizing my childhood, this is why I said I reflected a lot on how I was raised. My parents did an amazing job with all the tools and skills they had. The turning point for me is when I forgave my parents for the things I didn't have and flipped my mindset to say all the things that they were able to provide me.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. And so once you started recognizing that, because my parents had me young. So then I said, wow, what were you going through raising a child so young? So this is why we say when you start developing this, you start realizing in your relationships, you're filling gaps and voids.
Right.
From your I spoke enough, but this is why this topic means a lot to me, because the minute I started recognizing my feelings, but more importantly, understanding why I felt them, why it was important for me to actually be visible and create an identity that I owned.
Right.
I
think that's key, man. It's one thing you did say that struck a nerve in me too, is when we're talking about our parents or those who are raising us. I've heard this statement as I'm older now. What happened to you? Like, how did you grow up? What environment? Like, what are the things that happened to you that caused you to be this way? Again, not
negative
saying we're okaying any like abusive behavior, right? We're not okaying that. But what happened to you? Prime example. I don't know if I talked about this here. I don't know if I did. But my grandfather. I remember one time I came in the room. And I had my overalls on. Remember the overalls back in the day? The denim. You got the the strap,
the jumpers,
the shoulder, the
jumpers in Brooklyn.
See, so you have one arm. How'd y'all rock them? Y'all one arm up, one arm down, both arms down. How y'all wear them?
Man, let's rock to have what we want, man. I did both. I did it just open with just around the waist.
You could do it both that way. You crisscross came, but some people turned around backwards, right?
Yeah, nah.
So not there.
Nah. That's the rest of the world.
That was New York City. That wasn't the city, right?
Yeah.
Everyone watching, listening, when we say the city, Rod's from the city. It's only one city. It's New York City. So I'm rocking my overalls, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm walking into my grandfather's living room, and my grandfather says, "I hate those." I'm like, "My granddaddy, why you hating on my style? I just walked in the room. I'm coming from high school, feeling good, feeling fresh."
Yeah.
He said the metal would burn your chest when you were out in the cotton fields. So now that I'm older, that little or small illustration made me think of, wow, where you came from, the things you had to deal with, the things you did when you talked about your parents. My dad was 20 or 21 with 2 children and married. My dad was on his own since he was 16 years old. And so now that me and my brothers are adults now, we look back at the environment that may not have been the best environment, but it's like, wait a minute. What happened to my father?
Los, hurt people.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just had to say that there because that's part of, because you and I as Black men are on this pursuit of what we call self-actualization, doing meaningful work, doing stuff that resonates with us, but also this purpose-driven life, which means discovery and being in alignment with what your gifts and talents call you to do. And so this is where we're going to broach and talk a little bit more about emotional intelligence, but this is what we're talking about it. What impacted you and how's it impacting me, and how am I going to manage it? Like I said, we're never going to excuse anything, any acts of violence, but we're talking about every day where you come into a house and your frustration from your job gets translated to your children.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you frustrated with your job? So now let's stay there. Why are you frustrated with your job? Because they're putting you probably in scenarios of situations that you don't like, but you don't feel you have the ability to walk away. You're stricken. You're afraid. So now you got to kind of check yourself. Like, why am I lashing out on my children? Why is lashing out my reaction? What am I feeling? Am I feeling defeated? How do I manage this feeling? What's my outlets? You follow what I'm saying?
I do. So I want to ask you a question. I
Go
want
ahead.
to talk about this in this space because this is something we said we were addressing this in this section, and you right there on it. We talked about our fathers. We talked about some of the environments we grew up in, some things that we experienced. So what's the role of the Black father or father figures when it comes to emotional intelligence? Now, what is our role as fathers? Because when you hear about this, when you hear about emotions or emotional, a lot of times the first thing you think about is maybe a woman, maybe the mother. And so the mother does have her place. The Black woman does have her place with emotions and being able to intelligently move in that space so she can lead and guide and have conversations. But there's a place for the father. And a lot of times in my experience, you definitely don't think of or see the Black father in a space of emotions. So now I'm growing up and now I'm an adult man. And now since I've never seen it, either I move in the space of emotions like my mom, like my aunt, like my grandmother, because that's all I've seen is emotions expressed through women because I haven't seen it through men. So now what is our role? What is our role as Black fathers and father figures in the space of emotional intelligence when we're raising our Black sons in America and helping them with their emotions?
So you said so many things, and now I'm losing my train of thought. Right? So first, I want to push back a little bit, right? Because you mentioned that the Black mother, the Black woman, if I was Dr. Umar, the Black Nubian queen, right? Right. She provides this level of, I'm going to rephrase what you said because you used the word emotions, but we're going to call it nurturing because that's really what we're talking about here. Right. So we're talking about the role of the father. So in America, there's a spectrum, right? It's called individualism. I think it's Hofstede's dimensions. Individualism versus feminism, right? Something masculinity versus feminism, something like that.
Yeah.
In a feminist society, the way we think about it, you may think emotions, but feminist society is more, I think, along the lines of nurturing. U.S. is a masculine society where it's about accolades, awards, individual accomplishments, right? So we're driven to get the money, the house, the car, which is why everyone says, you've gotten all this. How could you be sad? In other countries, the husband and wife, the man and the woman, or whatever you want to do, both bear the responsibility of nurturers. They operate in the feminine. They both bear it. So the role of the father, I'm going to read off these 5 things. One, you got to have self-awareness because we're going to talk about how you translate it to your children. You got to be self-aware. You have to know how to self-regulate. You have to learn empathy, which is what we talked about with us looking back on our parents. My parents are my heroes because I'm like, I couldn't endure what you did. You did the best job possible. I may not have liked it. And obviously I have to work through some things, right? I think there's a saying, no matter what, you're going to end up in therapy. No matter what happens, you know what I mean? No matter how good of a job you do, your kids are going to end up in therapy. Their kids are going to end up in therapy. And then you want to develop some social skills around this. But when we talk about the father and our role, the first thing is for us to get help, right? It's for us to build up our skill set so that we can teach it, right? It's not good, it's not a do as I say, don't do as I do. This is a do as I do because kids learn through modeling. So to your point, are you talking about what you're feeling? Are you explaining why you feel what you feel? I'll tell you, and I tell you a little anecdote. I went to pick up my son from a lacrosse event, right? And it was a Saturday. He told me last minute. I'm like, don't tell me stuff last minute, son. I got but I went. I took him. He played. It was it wasn't a game. It was just a little fun scrimmage. 3 hours. I'm in the car. I said it's time to go. Dude got upset. You see your face? Like, my initial reaction was like, when he gets over here, But in the time it took for him to get to me to here, I said, wait a minute. And I'm going to fast forward. This is the conversation I had with him. I said, son, when I saw your reaction, I got upset. And I had to check myself to say, why would you be happy about leaving a game that you were having fun?
Mm,
So your reaction wasn't at me. It was a disappointment that, man, I
Right.
got to stop doing this.
right.
And my reaction was to get upset at you instead of saying, wait a minute, he's having a natural reaction.
Right.
And so I actually had that conversation with him to say, listen, although I didn't do anything, I'm sorry that I even felt this way. How many times have I put you in this scenario?
Right.
One of the best things I did as a dad was apologize to my kids.
Can I say this? When
Go
you
ahead.
do that in the example you gave, you're making space for your children to move in an emotional space
And
safely
authentic.
and intelligently, authentic. And it's particularly your sons.
Mhm,
For me,
mhm.
I had an example with my son where he was feeling a bit anxious, and he's young. You take me back to that age. Somehow you feeling anxious or some anxiety, boy. Let me whip that out of you. You won't be anxious no more, right? But when my son came and talked to me about it,
Mhm.
I listened to him, and now in future conversations after that, I would follow up and ask him, affirm him, and I would affirm him in the space of, "Hey, son, how are you feeling? Are
Yep.
you feeling anxious? Anything making you feel
Mhm,
anxious?"
mhm,
And
mhm.
my affirmation will come in the space of, "I want you to know, son, that it's okay to feel like that. Like it's okay to have that feeling. And sometimes we have this feeling. Watch this. I said sometimes we can find out an answer to it, and sometimes we don't. But it's okay to have that feeling. Nothing's wrong with you as a young man because you're having that feeling." So the reason why I bring it up is because I love what I saw with you is you made space. You made space for your son to be able to have a memory with his dad where his dad explained how he was feeling. Because like you said, you didn't even react, but you explained to him what was going on for you. And I can only imagine the benefit that was for him to be able to have in that moment his father explain it to him, but also in the future for him to move in the space of, you know what? I remember my dad was upset and he told me why, and he told me what was going on in his mind. So I think Rose as a father, that's a beautiful example to
Mhm.
make space
Yeah.
for our sons. And like you said, to explain and to find out what's going on within yourself and to model it. To me, what I saw there is you modeled that for your son, and he got a chance to see that in real time.
And it's important, right? Because now let's talk about why it's important, right? To the self-awareness, okay, um, and all the other components we just talked about. Because if you can, so let's we talked about this in a few other shows, racism and discrimination.
Yeah.
The things that you will do that are unique to a black man in America, if you do not strengthen and build up your emotional IQ, your emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your emotions, and also how it impacts others. When it's time, when you face discrimination, what's going to happen? Right?
Mm-hmm.
This is why John Wall was so important, because
Yeah.
at some point, John Wall was feeling so many things. And I don't know John Wall, but suicide seemed like the only option. When towards if you read the article, at some point, just having a conversation and unpacking his life turned out to be the best solution. Because he says in his article, I'm finally back. Right.
Mhm.
So your children are going to experience social barriers. They're going to be put in uncomfortable environments. And like myself, and probably like a lot of others, anger is probably your first response,
Yeah.
as opposed to empathy. Like people who try to hurt me, I'm not forgiving you trying to hurt me, but I'm understanding now you don't know no better,
Mm-hmm.
or you're hurt, or
Right.
you're ignorant, or
Right.
you're going through something. You never know what someone's going through. And I operate with empathy. This is why these skills are so important for us as black men, but black fathers, to understand them, to be able to teach them. Your children are gonna. We talk about leadership, right? It's hard to be a leader if you don't have emotional IQ, because you
Mhm.
can't empathize with
With the
others,
people
right?
you're leading. Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna be able to unpack all this on this particular show, Los. But like I told you, we're gonna bring the experts in at some point. But if you ask me, and I got my hands all in the camera, if you ask me, first work on yourself,
That's good.
then understand why it's important for your children to learn it. And I'll give you one little tip. If you're uncomfortable talking about your emotions with your kids, read a book with them. Read a book and have them tell you why the character is feeling how they felt and why they're responding, because you're developing critical thinking now.
Yeah.
Your children now are able to put words to emotions. And once they are empowered with that, and there's two faith-based people, we know words have power.
Exactly.
You can strengthen their emotional IQ this way.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to continue saying, Los, but I want to give some time.
You've done it already, man. I think in wrapping this up, closing this up, man, you gave several tips of what people can do, like real time reading a book with your child. Like that's a really good one to express someone's emotions. I want to read this from this site, Psychology Tools, and just explaining some of the emotions: love, joy, surprise, anger, sadness, fear. Again, showing that there are different types of emotions. So I want to share that to say, hey, if you're feeling these different things, it's okay to feel them, and they're different emotions. There are a wide range of emotions that we go through and feel. I love this one statement I've heard too from therapy, which is another skill and another practical tool or some advice that you can go to. I've been in therapy myself. I suggest people go to therapy not when just something's wrong, when you need to find out something that's going on that's right. You go through these different emotions, and it's okay. The statement I was going to say, it's okay to sometimes sit and just feel your emotions. I'll end with this, my last piece of advice, and it pretty much goes to what I just said. Antoine Fisher, I remember going to see him live. There's a movie about him before. There's a watching the direction the movie was in the movie. Antoine Fisher said, I go to my therapist, and he said, I find it strange that people go to get their teeth checked up on a regular basis. They get their body, their heart, their health checked up on a regular basis, but they don't get their mind checked up on a regular basis. So you don't have to go to sit in therapy just because something's wrong. If something's wrong, that's a good time as well. But also go when things are going great and you just need to get some tools and some skills. How to Raise Black Sons in America, Emotional Intelligence. I think this was a dope show. Our belief is that we share some information that will cause a conversation with Black fathers and Black sons. And we believe that we gave some information, some tips that will be helpful to people. Comment, like, subscribe, send us some information. And if we can give you some answers back to some things or direct you to some of the information we share here as well. I'm Carlos V. Spencer here with y'all again today.
This is Coach Rod. Loving the show, bro. Loving the show.
Black Dad Unfiltered, man. Y'all be blessed.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's grow. Let's grow. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's go.